Welcome back. This is the Battle of Chickamauga. So to set up my army, I cleared out some of the extra artillery units that I had left over from Gettysburg. Basically, I got rid of anything that had less than about 40 firearms. Most of them were like 30, 32, so I just dumped those back into the recruit pool. Chickamauga is one of those battles where it's pretty easy to drive up scaling since the enemy army is pretty small. So decided to not push it up more than I needed to. Most of my militia units I have switched over to rifles. I didn't do anything with the cavalry. I just won't be using them in the battle. They're kind of useful if you're going to try and sneak points on day 2. But I'm going to go to day 3, so I'm not going to bother with anything like that. Probably would have been useful to bring them in on day 3 to clean some stuff up, but went with infantry instead. So this is going to be the corps that fights day 1. The 1st Division goes up to about 1250. Those units are going to come in at the northern ford and going to take a little more damage than normal. The 3 artillery units are going to come in on the manual deploy and be used to take out the enemy artillery, and the snipers are going to help with that as well. So I went with an average size of 1200 for most of my infantry. I've done this battle with 1100 before and it works fine, but figured I'd see if the 1200 get me a little bit better results. Debatable. I think I added a few thousand troops of my own for about 6,000 to 8,000 of theirs. So maybe not worth it, but gives you a little more leeway. And I left some of the infantry units a little bit smaller, like you can see the 1100s, just because they're going to come in pretty late on day 1 and not do a whole lot of fighting, so 1100 is more than enough for that purpose. So on day 1, it's not particularly difficult, but the main goal is to try and reduce the enemy skirmisher size as much as possible. It just makes day 2 much easier. So the other thing I did is continuing the trend of units with 75 firearms or so get the 1863s, about 65 to 70 get the 61s, then from 65 to 50 get the Harper's Ferries, and then anything lower gets Enfields or whatever I have left. I'm a little short on 63s to do that, but that holds true pretty much throughout. I do have a few units that were upsized for Siege of Jackson and didn't take very many casualties, so those are going to be a little bit larger. So this corps is going to be what's going to come in first on day 2. So again, all the units are 1200. Most of the 24 pounders are here. All of the artillery from the 3rd Corps are going to be swapped back into this corps for day 2, and then I'll bring 2 snipers over as well. And then this corps is going to be my reinforcements on day 2. Pretty similar setup, 24 pounders, Tredegards, since I don't have enough 20 pounders. And I'll be moving 2 snipers back over from there. The 4th Division doesn't come in at all on day 2, so it's kind of just stockpiled, and then I was planning on just having extra artillery to clear out stuff on day 3. So that's why I'm using that current setup. From what I remember, I didn't move around too much with officers. I did pull the 1st and 2nd Corps Major Generals just to get them some more experience. I also bought about a couple thousand extra farmers, I think. We're doing pretty well in terms of the armory. So I also bought up the Whitworth Yeses, didn't buy anything for cavalry, and bought the Tredegards, the 24 pounders, and the 20 pounders. Not quite sure if I'm actually going to be ever using all those 24 pounders, but it's better to have them, and if I end up wanting to use a bunch of cheap units at Washington, then they'll be useful for that. 1-star 24 pounders still do pretty well. In the barracks, we've got pretty much infinite stuff at this point. And I've continued putting points in logistics instead of training. Probably maybe one, at most two more in logistics, and then we'll probably max out the training. Just because, and I was, for upgrading units, I was putting about $2,000 worth of veterans into most units, and then the rest were recruits. So once we get the training maxed out, then I'll probably still keep putting about the same amount unless my money starts skyrocketing. But we'll go from there. In terms of reputation buy, I bought the Enfields and the Fayetteville's. The Enfields to use, the Fayetteville's to sell. It's, you know, 240,000 for selling those off if we need to. If we have enough, I pretty much envision that I'll sell those off at some point, just to buy other rifles of some kind. So that's pretty much my setup. I'm going to be swapping all of the units out of 3rd and 4th Corps going into day 2. In terms of size, we're 16,000. That went up a little bit from my starting point, bringing, we have about 60,000 men again. And training and weapons is about 56, and we're at the minimum AI size, so slow as it can go. So I'm just bringing in the 2 infantry units to spot, and I'll have one to cross the bridge. I send the artillery through the open and then move into the trees so that they get there a little bit faster. And the reason I don't bring any infantry in this phase is I don't plan to force the bridge until my reinforcements arrive and attack from behind. So I just don't need the infantry units. And I never really face any field charges or anything, so there's no need for 24 pounders. The reason I have my snipers that far over is that gets them far enough that you're actually hitting the flank, which means you'll get about 10 to 11 shots, kills per shot, compared to if I move down to a little closer, even though, degrade wise we're doing better, we're actually going to be getting about half the kills we normally do. So I move them back and forth and keep the flank of the unit. Once we get rid of the artillery, I move units into the open. This causes some of the units that spawn up north to come after me, and sometimes you can get the infantry to cross out over as well. So you get a lot of free damage in. Other than that, just continuing to work on stuff. Okay, so at this stage is pretty tricky. I detach skirmishers immediately to try and draw enemy fire. You're pretty much guaranteed to take the first volley of Harris, though, either way. I got a pretty good RNG roll, I guess. Okay, so you really want the skirmishers to be further west if you can. Doing okay at driving them out of the woods, but we really want to take that position so we can flank that artillery, because Harris has 24 pounders and he hurts. Some of it has to do with the perks he has, but you can see, a single volley will rout a skirmisher unit, and similar things can happen with your infantry units as well. But just keeping pushing around the corner, so I gotta get the skirmishers out of the way, but then I can hit the artillery, and from there I can wrap up the position. So this is one of the benefits of having units in the open when T comes down instead of attacking up here. So we can get some extra casualties on him to try and run across the bridge and get wrecked. So just trying to doing a little bit of running, because I really don't want to take another volley, or many more if I can avoid it. I think I take at least one more. But we're doing pretty well. We've gotten to the north of the skirmishers, so they should start going down soon. And we've got them out of the way. Now we can break the artillery unit. I have forgotten to move my other units to cross the ford. I should have detached skirmishers immediately and sent them southwest, but timing's going to end up working out. So just continuing to shift up, reattaching the skirmishers to reset their morale and condition. And so now we just keep pushing them back. finally remember that I need to do stuff with these guys. The reason I send the skirmishers up is I want to try and contain these units up top and hopefully wipe them out. Doing so is really dependent on what the AI decides to do. Like, if it runs the right way, it's pretty easy to get rid of them. If it runs the wrong way, you end up chasing stuff through the trees forever, and it doesn't really happen. But most of these units start trying to, once you take the northeast VP, they try and head south to defend the bridge. So that's why I line these units up to try and stop them. And even though I don't have a full infantry unit up there, I'm still able to hold up that infantry, which doesn't have particularly good morale. So, targeting Minty again, if I can get rid of him, it simplifies a lot of things. The Minty from the south decided to, I think he starts at this VP, but he, I guess, retreated to the southwest. I think if I had moved detached my skirmisher to move him up on time, I think I would have caught him and not be split, but make do with what you end up with. So I'm just chasing him off with 2 units, keeping the infantry pinned. Got rid of the artillery, and I'm just going to start trying to wipe out what I can up north. If we get really lucky, the infantry tries to cross the bridge. Say that's almost 1 in 5 chance of happening. That's pretty rare. Sometimes one of those infantry units will even go all the way to the north. Not sure what I did differently this time to trigger this one, but so we've got it opened up because the infantry's crossing. I'm going to keep the artillery there a little longer. Normally I would hit snipers south to start hitting one of the artillery pieces down there, but I figure my chance to inflict extra damage on the infantry is worth the time. I bring this southern rifle unit over because sometimes the enemy cavalry that starts in the southwest will try and cross, and I want to have some cover if I have skirmishers there. I think they decided to running around in the north at the moment. So I've got most of it cleared out. I'm leaving 2 skirmishers on the victory point just because there's so much cavalry and skirmishers running around that if you don't leave stuff there, something's going to sneak past you, and then you could lose the victory points at the last minute and have no way to recover. There will be a fun outtake of that happening. I lose both victory points with 5 minutes left, and just have 0 time to try and respond to it. So that was real fun. But this is going pretty well. Getting 3 damage on the cavalry. Got to hit Ray pretty good. The more damage you can do to them now, the less they will hurt you when you try and get the bottom 2 victory points. Some fun ghost cavalry running through. And I'm in no rush to take the bottom victory point. I want to wait for the last set of reinforcements to come in before I do that. So I'm just working on cleaning this stuff up here, and then I'm actually going to start bringing units down to flank the 2 victory points in the south. One thing to note, you do have to have all 4 victory points by the time the timer ends. If one of them is contested and the timer ends, I'm pretty sure you just get the victory. And if you capture all 4 objectives, then you can do extra time remaining. The battle automatically ends. So now that I've finally cleared them, we're going to cross. Down our skirmishers. This part's a little bit of a mess with that infantry unit charging north. It sort of puts them in a position that's hard to get to, which is a little frustrating. But so I'm sending the supplies across to refill the ammo of some of those units because they will get a little bit low. And then I'm sending the artillery down to start working on what I can on the 2 remaining victory points. One thing to note is when you pincer the units at the bridge, if you're not careful, one of those units can, and you bring down the units from the north too fast, the Union units will route to the right, and then you sort of have to split your forces to try and cut them down. They fall in the open here. It's not very good. And now we get into the fight people in the woods part of Chickamauga that we generally try and avoid just because it's horribly inefficient. So I'm taking extra losses here to try and clear these units. Debatable if it's worth it. But I just don't want to deal with them on day 2. So you're pretty safe on the edge there with snipers, but it depends where the AI goes with its units. Sometimes you'll get spotted there, and sometimes you can spot the enemy artillery right at the crossroads. This time I can't, which is a little unfortunate. But that's why I usually bring that unit down there, because if I can spot the unit on the crossroads, then I can just wipe it out before I ever take any fire. So we finally got our last set of reinforcements, so we can bring those over and set up to make the crossing. We've got about an hour and a half left, which is alright, much on schedule. Slowly pushing these guys out so we can start going south. Putting those detached skirmishers on the victory point and going hunting for Minty with those. Looks like they tried to cross for some reason. Not sure why, but lost one of the detached skirmishers up there. I think he got run over by a cavalry unit. It's a little unfortunate, but overall this is going decently. Be a little more efficient. In some ways, getting units to retreat in different directions, like use it to catch them in the open, is actually pretty nice. But it doesn't happen this time. But we've got superiority in numbers, so we can just hit them from multiple sides and start crossing. Or, I guess, I'm talking about getting units in the woods, but same thing happened down there too. So I think there's a cavalry unit that's hitting me up there. We've almost got these units to shatter. And we've got the ford opened up, so we're going to be able to cross soon. Sometimes the infantry, instead of sort of retreating slowly, will just, or sticking at that northern bridge, will just retreat straight back to the bottom 2 victory points. Not really sure what the triggers for it are, but if that happens, it can make taking the last area a little bit harder. So it's in some ways good that they decided to go elsewhere. So now that I've got the crossing, I'm going to start moving the snipers over to attack the other one. One thing to note, both the fortifications at the southern victory points have a pretty tight window of what counts as flanking, so you almost have to be directly behind them to get a flank off on them, which is a little frustrating at times. You can almost surround them with snipers, and they just don't take any damage. So, just charge him to get rid of him. Found the artillery finally. Not in the greatest spot, but we're just going to have everything run and try and get it before we get shot. And we're not getting hit by skirmishers or cavalry while crossing. That area down there can be really dangerous just because you have very low vision, and the large skirmisher units and stuff can really hurt when you're trying to walk uphill or across the ford while getting shot. So I really try and avoid that if at all possible. So, just trying to clean up. I know there's more units around. Started to find the clump, but so we're going to take losses there, but we should have enough infantry that we should be able to clear it. I'm starting to get some from the north. Sometimes you'll run there. I'm pretty sure there is another artillery unit somewhere on this map, but I don't know where it's hiding. Sometimes I run into it up north. For whatever reason, I'm not this time. I have no idea where it ends up. It is somewhere. So you can see, taking pretty heavy losses trying to clear through these guys. It's just a bit of a mess. But bring the snipers over so I can get some flank shots when possible. The downside of the units staying at the middle bridge a little longer is that these units in the north are delayed. Like, optimally, you'd have them sort of exiting the tree line right about the time that you're hitting in from the east. But it didn't work out this time. So this last part's a bit messy. We got units all over the place. Stuff running out of ammo. Stuff just not shattering or surrendering or anything. But we got the victory point. And this is where I didn't realize that when that test timer ticks down, that you actually lose, that the battle ends completely. Otherwise, I would have held off a little bit longer in taking it just so that I could get the extra time. But we've got them in a pretty good spot now. Like, we've got them flanked, we've got them surrounded, their morale's low. So now we can start just getting rid of them. And if the timer was a little bit longer, we'd probably take some casualties doing it, but we could wipe out everything here, and that would simplify things on day 2, because a lot of my strategy involves getting rid of the skirmishers so that I'm not spotted and then my artillery can hit them and they can't hit me. But doing pretty well, and there's the surprise extra day. Looks like we took about 3,000 casualties. I've never been able to get it much under 2,000 if I'm aggressive enough to try and take stuff out. I think I killed a little less than I normally can. Like, I've seen that number go down to like 57,000 if you get that other cannon unit and wipe out a bit more of the infantry. But overall, in fine shape. And then we go into camp. And we need to move some stuff around. So, first, moving over the artillery, and then moving over the snipers. Just trying to make sure I get the right units in the right place. So I want my 2 best scope snipers in the 1st division, just because they're going to be the most dangerous spots, so I need the extra range there. And then, once I get those moved, the other thing I need to do is swap out the units from 4th Corps to 3rd Corps. So unfortunately, it's not possible to change which corps is deployed where between days. So you have to swap divisions and do it that way. This is one of the reasons why I basically never fill up the last division in my last corps, because once you do that, then you can't keep swapping them like this. So I always leave one open so that I can swing things around. So a little bit smaller because I'm bringing less infantry this time, but we've still got plenty in reserve. So I bring very little infantry in this first setup because the AI is just going to sort of go for the victory points and leave me alone. So I just set up some artillery and shoot the units I can. I leave snipers on both extreme flanks. You can get some shots off early. I do put some infantry over here because I'm going to try and bait them to charge me. And those units come down a little bit earlier. My goal in the north is to try and get all the units to come down and try and take the victory point while I leave the snipers up there and then eventually sneak them around behind and hit the artillery that's up there. Otherwise that artillery sort of shoots at you all battle. So that's why I leave the supply wagon and everything else up there, just to hopefully get stuff out. And the unit on the left is going to be able to spot and fire its stuff when it spawns in. Just start getting some extra damage on units and the artillery. You do have to be very careful with the snipers in the northeast, because depending on what the AI does, sometimes they will leave multiple skirmisher units up there, and if you're not careful, you can just get overwhelmed. I've also seen the skirmishers go straight south before. Not really sure what triggers it. So I'm a little late on getting the supply wagon to run, so I engage to block the supply wagon from getting captured and not fortifications. It doesn't do a whole lot as soon as I get shot, then I route. But we saved the supply wagon, and we got it to come down and get pretty beat up. So I'm setting the detached skirmishers up to see if I'm going to run into anything. And I do, so I run away. And set up to start working on those guys. Looks like we didn't quite get Minty in the last phase, but he's severely under strength at this point. Looks like one of the skirmishers did come down, so I'm going to try and handle those. Got a little bit longer on these snipers. There are more reinforcements coming that I'm going to have to worry about. So, but the good news is their skirmishers are not running over towards the snipers. Sometimes they will do that, and then you have to really run to try and get out of there. But this phase is going really well. We've got these units all coming down into the water where we can hit them. I guess one thing to note is the reason I brought the 14-pounder over there as opposed to a 24-pounder is the 14-pounder will do all right at anti-infantry. But I want a slightly longer ranged artillery piece there to be able to hit the cannon once I spot it. So we got some reinforcements coming in. They're mostly going to reinforce the left side of my line since I don't have any infantry there. Eventually stuff will start poking around. But overall, as long as you stay hidden, the AI is remarkably willing to just sit there and on the victory point and not do anything, which I'm going to take full advantage of. I don't really want units in the middle here. This is why I'm fighting those skirmishers off. I don't leave a lot of units there, so it's just can cause problems. That's why I'm sending one of the reinforcements up there to deal with this problem. But you can see in the north, I was able to push out the skirmishers and start getting the snipers into position. Not quite out of the artillery spotted yet, but so, just setting up my line. I'm not going to try and contest the VPs at all. You don't need them until the very end of day 2. So, just no reason to hold them. If you hold them, you just end up in firefights with units of trees, and that's how you take really high casualties and sometimes lose this battle. Just not worth it. So, got rid of the skirmishers. One of the infantry, some of my got spotted and got some infantry up there that are going to cause me some problems, but still hidden, so we're doing all right. Pulling 1-6 sniper back, just because I'm about to get cut off, so I want to get him out of there. It'd be really risky to try and leave him up there. Units sort of move back and forth as different parts of your force get spotted, and eventually they will probably get caught. So some of the AI logic in a battle like this is what seems to be going on is there are areas that the AI has to have a certain number of units in. So they have a certain number of units that need to be in that little hill to the north of the Jay's Mill victory point. And then there's a certain number of units, and it almost seems like there's fortifications, but I don't think so. Like, I don't think I've actually seen them in them around the Brotherton Road victory point. And so what you're going to end up seeing is just a huge mass of units sitting around that victory point, effectively doing nothing because they can't see anything, but they have to be there. So what you have to deal with is, if you stay hidden properly, then the few units that aren't allocated to those areas can go off and do things. So you can let them go off. If you set it up right, those units go off and chase after whatever they can, while those other units stand there and do nothing, letting you sort of take apart the enemy force one part at a time. So to deal with this push from the west, I'm redeploying my artillery a little bit to keep it safe, and sending the snipers to be able to hit the flanks. A little late with the 20-pounders, probably should have moved them earlier so they could be firing right now, but still plenty of time. couple of charges coming in. Ruff stops at the worst possible point for him. So he's going to run soon and get the artillery working on theirs. So now we get some more reinforcements. There usually is a push around this time by the AI, just because those units on the west keep you spotted, so stuff's going to come down. So you do need to be set up to deal with that. But for now, I can get rid of the artillery, and then I'll bring flanking units in to start hitting the charges. I'm not sure triggering that charge was particularly great, because I got to peel off a unit there, but Hazen is staying out of range, so we're actually alright. I'm going to shift some units around and push that foray back pretty quickly. We don't really need any more reinforcements on the right. I've got enough over there to do what it needs to do. But I'm hoping I can finally get over there to start spotting the artillery, starting to do damage. Should be moving my supply wagon around a little bit more. It's hard to keep filled on this battle just because the distances are long and there's a lot of bad terrain in between, so it just takes a while for the wagon to move. But we're in pretty good shape. They're mostly out in the open cover. I've got artillery support, they don't. So we finally spotted the artillery up there. I don't know what McCook was doing that far up. I don't know what he was chasing. I see that infantry movement coming down, so that's why I run over one of my center reinforcements. The AI can't see me, but it seems to sort of know I'm there, or is responding to taking fire, so I have to keep moving units back and forth. So I can't do as much to that artillery unit as I really like. Sometimes the artillery unit moves further south. I think maybe it does that if you don't leave units in the open to be spotted, and sometimes that can be really nice because you're much closer to be able to. It's harder to see with your snipers, but it's much easier to take out with your artillery. So pushed off that unit in the center, artillery. Got a little bit of push in the middle. We can drive him back, then we can go back to hiding and stop taking losses. There's also a lot of artillery in that clump over there, so that's why I try and keep my units hidden most of the time, because otherwise you will take quite a bit of losses. But this is pretty much going to be what I do for a good chunk of the battle. Certainly on this half of the map. I don't try and go for the victory points at all until they're basically completely wiped out at the end. There's no benefit in holding them, so. Sort of moving forward, I kind of want to push those guys back, but I have to be careful about it because I'm going to take flanking fire if I do. Looks like something rounded up there, that's always good. Cruft got into a sort of a weird spot. Decides to not move too much, which is good. I want to be able to start moving into the field there, so that I can try and get vision in the pocket. It is pretty hard to do so unless you have units either to the north or west. So, for this part of the battle, we're just going to be doing more or less the same in our initial line, baiting some charges in when I can. So, where I'm moving units right now, there is a giant gap in the Union line. It's about to be filled by reinforcements coming in, but you can, if you have infantry there, you can get there faster. And if you can hold them there, you can basically stop them from ever forming their main fortification line. And from there, the battle is basically over. If you want to win on day 2, it's super easy to do it. If you want to go to day 3, it's also pretty easy. So we're just completely ignoring the League Ordnance Mill bridge. There's just, you don't even, actually need to take it to win at all. If you have the line of 3 victory points in the north, so you could completely ignore it, and there's not much down there. One fun trick, if you hide everything, like just completely refuse to engage with your entire force up to this point, is you can set up a couple units across that bridge and spotted, and every single free unit in the Union Army will walk across the entire map to come down there and try and attack you across the bridge, which is really fun, but it's just less efficient than actually grinding down the units while you have the chance, and it makes because there are so many units sitting on those victory points, you actually take a lot of losses into doing it that way. So, but one of those fun little tidbits, find out while experimenting. So I'm just bringing everything up to go into this gap in the line. It would be nice to be able to capture that Brotherton cabin, but if you capture that, even though like you're partway fulfilling the victory conditions, it breaks the day 3 victory condition. So to get to day 3, you have to hold Brotherton Road and Jay's Mill. If you hold any other victory point, you will lose or draw. I don't know why it works this way. It's really frustrating. You would think, okay, I have partial conditions for a draw or a victory. Take me to the next day, but just not how it works for whatever reason. But we run into that artillery unit. That's normal. There's a bunch of cavalry coming up. That's expected. So I'm just running to get into slightly better position to deal with them. And then I'm basically setting up a holding force there, and then I'm going to slide everything over. You can see I'm starting to use pause pretty frequently in this stage, just because it's pretty difficult to maintain all parts of this battle at once in real time, at least for me. And in a lot of ways, like if I'd used it more, I would have been able to get even better kill rates, because once you get to a certain stage, the real kill rates are increases come from, you know, perfectly micromanaging your flanking fire, avoiding charges, not taking extra artillery fire when you're not noticing it, so on and so forth. And you have to pause a lot to really be able to do that. So I get lucky. One of the supply wagons comes over in a spot that I can grab it easily. Sometimes there's skirmishers in those woods or infantry there that make doing that harder. But this time, it conveniently walks right into my view. We got the snipers coming up, so we got a little more vision to start working on the artillery. And just starting to push in to hold this tree line. I don't want to go too far south, because I don't want to get into a firefight with the unit in the farm. Just because I really want to be flanking that from the south before I do that. I've got my snipers working on the artillery unit that walks over. Slowly working on Church. He's going down much slower than I prefer. Sometimes I get him down pretty quickly, but it's just not happening this time around. So I'm sending the TS unit to start working at the units in the fortifications while I let my other sniper unit just chase down the artillery, which is going to end up taking most of the battle. It's a little ridiculous, but he's not firing at my units. So once I get this line set up, I do have to be a little careful because there is cavalry and stuff that's running around. I'm also crossing over the stream to take up a line, I guess directly southwest of the, I think it's Kelly's Field. It's either Kelly's or Vineyard, I don't remember which, of that victory point. I don't want to actually take the victory point because I want to go to day 3, but there is a line of reinforcements coming in to either go towards this middle clump or take out more fortifications to the north. That I want to stop, and then I'll be able to, from there I'll be able to flank and take them out. So I'm being pretty aggressive and putting a thin line across it. I think I forget about Church or something. Actually, I think I saw the cavalry and then forgot about the infantry unit up there. But thankfully, the 2-to-1 advantage is enough to see me through. Detached skirmishers are going to rout a unit, 10 times their size. Helps that I get some rifle fire in the back as well. So that unit being behind me is a little unfortunate, but it's not gonna slow us down too much. Constantly losing vision of Church and having to redirect fire on him. But all those units standing in the open, very good. Bringing over some infantry. I don't always do this, but with the units, cavalry there, and with that Church sitting there, I just want to have some extra protection, because if a unit walks to the northeast, they're going to pin my snipers, and I don't want that to happen. So you can see I'm setting up the line here. It's not great, because they're in the trees as well, but if I back up more, then I'm going to take fire in the rear victory point. Maybe if I wasn't dealing with Church, I could probably spare an extra infantry unit or two in those attached skirmishers and clear the unit off of the victory point, and then I'd be able to back up a little bit, get them in the river, and then engage them from there. But we still get a decently favorable trade. I missed the unit coming forward and took some casualties on the snipers. It always sucks. But that'll happen up there. The vision's not great, and units constantly keep trying to walk to the southwest. So if I'd been a little more on top of it, would have prevented that, but only took one volley, so nothing in the world. Starting to get things cleared up in the north. Got our line in the west. Pretty much holding everything there, and once the artillery arrives, gets set up, then we'll be in really good shape. Got lucky and caught those snipers from getting free volley on them. So I swing some units around to the south because there are reinforcements that come up from there. And if I cross south of the cabin, I won't accidentally take the victory point, and then I can start enveloping the entire line of units that are against my western line there. So, see another supply wagon we're going to go grab. One comment about going into the woods north of Jay's Mill. You need to be really careful when you do this, because if you put units up there and they have units there, then you usually get infantry charging you, and then that infantry tends to stick around in those woods, and digging them out is unpleasant. So I managed to get the timing right this time, that there was nothing there, so I was able to move in and get the flanking position there. But it's not always a good idea to do that. You really gotta play to the situation, because like if I ran into infantry units in those trees, I would retreat all the way back to my previous line. It's just not worth trying to dig them out unless they're very small. But so we're taking a little artillery fire, not a big deal. And now we got their second supply wagon. The supply wagons here have 15k in them, so always nice to capture those. And if you can get them out of there so they aren't refilling their artillery, all the better. But we're actually doing a pretty good job now of staying out of sight around the Brotherton Road victory points. We really aren't taking too many losses there. At times I will try and bait charges more, but you take heavier losses, and you can see I've spread my forces pretty thin. I really don't have much in this area. So inciting more charges there is not really a great idea. You also need to be careful that you leave a couple of units in the area behind your artillery, because eventually some cavalry or random infantry units routing will end up behind you, and you don't want to be surprised by that. At some point also, my 20-pound howitzer, 20-pound parrot unit that does not have the stealth perk got exposed to fire, so I end up losing a gun in it, which is something I never want to happen with units I can't just buy more weapons for. But thankfully I managed to catch it before it got too bad. But I'm not sure what triggered it, but something moved forward and it got seen and got shot by multiple artillery batteries. So nice as the extra accuracy bonus is on the damage, you gotta be real careful with those units, because it's just too easy for them to get spotted by something or other. But this is going pretty well. Oh, we have a cavalry unit that rides straight through our lines. Always pleasant. I think we did a good volley off on it. Finally see most of their artillery, and I think that's mostly due to that unit in the northeast. If you can get a unit into the woods on the left side of the road, you sometimes can. That's also another way to sometimes get vision of that area. So, spotted again. A lot of running back and forth up here, but we don't lose any units. Those units on the right are pretty beat up at this point. Don't really like seeing units ever get down to about 800, but the fight's almost over, so not that big a deal. Got lucky that charge stopped, otherwise we'd have to go in melee there. They decided to slide sideways as opposed to actually retreat away from the charging unit. Realize the church still isn't dead. I think that's a lot of the reason I took so many casualties on the right, is I just never really cleared out that artillery. But it kept places that are just hidden, so not much I could have done about it. We've almost got all their artillery in this central pocket. And once we have that, we can do whatever we want. Still working on chasing down that artillery unit down there. So you can see I managed to get the guy into the woods and get some extra vision from there. But the infantry's moving through there, so he's not going to be able to stay for very long. Probably should have moved those units forward into the fields. I didn't need it for the flanking fire. That unit was already going to retreat, and then they're not in great cover, and they take some more losses fighting up there. But it's mostly 1-star units or just relatively fresh 2-star units, so not that big a loss. So I'm still worried about that infantry unit behind me, so I'm just keeping that guy back there. And I'm just gonna swing the door closed on these guys and get them out of the trees so that I'm not continually fighting them. As I'm gonna keep fighting them in cover, but I'm gonna get them out eventually. So swinging around so I can hit that artillery a little better. I just really want to get rid of it now. Probably should have moved that supply wagon around somewhere more useful. I get pretty lucky with those skirmishers that I don't either take an artillery volley or don't get attacked by cavalry or something. I probably should have just set them up somewhere in the northeast where the artillery is likely to try and move through and just wait for them there. But I kept expecting them to shatter and it just didn't happen. So this is a little ugly because we don't have anything to take out that artillery. We're going to take canister even if we're in good cover. We cleared out before too long, thankfully. Another infantry unit causing problems. I feel like more of them ended up there than normal. Normally it feels like there's only a few and then the rest of them go elsewhere, but for whatever reason more ended up there this time. Trying to slide this line is a little annoying. I probably should have taken that unit around where those skirmishes are going earlier. I thought I needed a little bit more in the south, because sometimes more units come up from down there, but they just don't this time. Maybe they're in the north, or maybe I destroyed them on day one, don't know. Finally get to fire into that artillery piece, so they should go down soon. And then once we get these guys out of the woods, then we can just set up the artillery and wait. So I finally got that artillery unit, so I can bring the snipers back up. These units are getting pretty small, so that situation should be wrapped up before too long. Found the other supply wagon, so go get rid of that one. So I guess overall, let's see, we're starting to ramp up. So overall my performance for this day I think is okay. Not sure I could have played most of this up to this point. I don't think I could have played it too much better. Get a little luckier. Yeah, it goes. You save some casualties. Hard to say if this push in the west here was really worth it. You know, maybe it would have been better to pull back and then just take out the units on day 3. But I see the target, see the flank, decide to go for it. Otherwise, we'd just be sitting here doing nothing for longer, so... Still chasing down Cruft. So yeah, not much to talk about at this stage of the battle. Just sort of hitting the units I can, doing a little extra damage. Yeah, I think I'm just going to let the battle play for a little bit, and then when something worth talking about comes up, I will hop back in at that point. So, while not really relevant to the current situation, but something mechanic I figured I'd talk about is how the range of weapons and firing arms actually work. So, each weapon has an associated effective range and an effective range hint. The hint is what is actually displayed in the base game tooltips. In the mod, I display the actual effective range. The firing arc for each weapon is based on the actual effective range, not the hint. So this is why in the base game, even though muskets show a range of 220, I think it is, and some rifles show as much as 400 range, the firing arcs for those two weapons is actually the same. Now what I think confuses people is that while the firing arcs are generally accurate, there are situations that you can get into where you're firing at something that is outside the visual arc, the visual firing arc. So what's happening there is the actual targeting calculations does something to the effect of, it takes the effective range and then multiplies it by some sort of spot modifier, if I'm remembering correctly. Basically, you get the effective range plus a little bit. I'm not really sure why that's the case. That's just how it's set up to work, and it seems, in most situations, it seems to work fine. Units walk up, get to something at the edge of their fire range, and fire at it. But in certain cases, specifically when units are at different angles, you can hit targets that are outside the range of your firing arc. And I think this is what people look at and say, oh, yeah, you know, this is happening because this rifle has 400 range and that musket has 200, so that's why I can hit things farther away. No. The ranges are the same, it's just that the the way the calculations work, I think that it targets like the center of the unit, and so if you get at the right angle, like just the way everything lines up, you're actually able to hit something that looks like it's out of range. That's probably a bad explanation, and whoever actually programmed this is, they happen to be listening to this for some reason, is probably saying, nope, you have no idea what you're talking about. But that's how it seems to work to me. So you'll see me use this off and on in various videos, that if you just set up units just right, you can hit them without them being on fire back, which is always great. But still just cleaning up, slowly moving stuff forward, hitting what I can, getting rid of the stuff in the north. And at this point you can see, if you wanted to win the battle on day 2, it would be trivial. I've got units sitting around every single victory point that I could take if I wanted to. I guess I'm not near Kelly's Field, but you know, we have 2 hours left on this timer, and I have a bunch of units just sitting there. So if you just want to get out of this on day 2, you know, no reason not to do it. And in some ways, getting out on day 2 might really be the better plan. You probably don't need to inflict complete total casualties in this battle. So theoretically, if I just went for the victory point win and left all this stuff sitting in the middle, then I would probably come out a couple of thousand casualties ahead, and I'd still kill enough to keep scaling from going up, or keep the ASIs from going up too much. So maybe that was the better play, but Chickamauga was one of those battles that when I first started playing, I was like, okay, how the heck do you get to day 3? And I never even figured it out until someone gave me the hint that, oh, you have to make sure none of the objectives are met. So I wanted to show off how to get there. And in some ways, going to day 3 makes things really easy, because most of the units tend to be destroyed, and you just have a bunch of units sitting in fortifications. You can flank and destroy whenever it's convenient. So at this point, this is probably a mistake. I get bored, because, well, not a lot's going on in this battle. So I start sending units over just to see, okay, is anything here? And eventually get myself into some trouble doing that. So we finally wrapped up everything in the north. Just going to leave some infantry brigades up there to clean up any these guys who are retreating. But that situation is basically done, so we can start moving stuff back to the center. I'm just moving my units in a line, seeing, okay, is there any infantry up here I can hit? Which is really probably a bad idea, because had there been infantry there, I was going to either have to cross the river or engage units in the open while they're in heavy cover. So, like, I probably should have, if nothing else, I should have sent skirmishers to find out. But I was pretty sure there was nothing there, so I just wanted to move units over and then maybe flank that line where I can't see the different units. Slowly sliding those skirmishers up north just to keep giving me vision. I'm still not sure if there's any artillery left in there. This is one of those cases where having Recon 4 is actually really useful, because you can just look at it and say, oh, okay, they're out of artillery, or oh, there's 10, 12 guns left, so they must have artillery somewhere. I need to go find them and get rid of them. But at this point, I think their artillery is all gone, so I don't need to be pushing. I have units in sight. My artillery can hit them. Move the artillery up slightly, which I think is what I'm starting to do here, moving the infantry forward so I can get the infantry, so I can get the artillery up, and then just, at this point, hit fast forward, almost walk away from the game. And that's probably what I should have done. I should just set these units up, let the artillery fire whatever they're going to hit, and just wait the remaining, I don't think it's 50 minutes for this phase. I feel like there's another phase afterward. I don't remember for sure. better to just do that, because I'm going to end up taking extra casualties trying to get more kills than I'm going to. You have so much time on day 3, there's no reason to rush anything if you're planning on going to it. Like moving these units in over here, like the infantry over there, it's just not worth it. Should not be doing that. There's just no real benefit to it. I'm not going to get any more scouting than I already have, and I'm setting myself up for the mentality of, oh, I should try and destroy everything in the pocket because they're all routing and they don't have any artillery left, and I'm in a good position to hit them from all sides. I should come out favorably, but you can see I'm sitting here, I'm exchanging fire with multiple units in the woods. Many of them which are 3-star. I don't have 3-star units, so this entire escapade right here, I think, is a mistake. I should not be doing this because these units are all so beat up. All I have to do is wait till day 3. They all sit in the fortifications because the AI basically always has to fill fortifications if it has units to do so, and then I just can hit one unit at a time. But instead, I'm just taking casualties. Like I'm not gaining anything when I'm doing this. And I mean, I'm coming out all right here, but it's just unnecessary casualties. And a lot of it, I think, is because the battle has been dragging on for a while, and frankly, I'm a little bored. I'm just sitting here fast forwarding. So, well, I should be, except I'm moving these infantry units forward and having to stay on normal speed to try and get them in decent situations. But those units are out of ammo. The snipers are exhausted. This is just not when I should be pursuing an attack into the woods. It's just poor decision making. Pops up, we have extra time. I think it's... we have an extra hour or 2 or something like that, I don't remember for sure. But instead of staying back and just letting my artillery work, I decide to, complete the encirclement. Except this is, in many ways, the worst place to do an encirclement because they're all in cover. Really want to be doing this sort of thing when they're in the open, because then you'll route them much faster and just don't take the extra losses that I'm going to be taking. I mean, it's not too bad. I'm only taking 10, 20 per volley, but that adds up, and there's just wasn't necessary. Like, I don't have quite enough infantry in place to actually do this round, so the stuff's starting to sneak out. It's going to come back and start hitting on the side. These units are getting beat up. So, all in all, very poor decision, I think, in terms of the course of the battle. Should have just stayed back, moved the snipers up, let them shoot, take all the free kills without any losses, instead of doing this. End result's going to be day 3 is going to be basically a joke, because there's going to be almost nothing left. Open for a surrender, don't get it. Finally get around to moving the artillery up. I don't even have my generals up where they should be, finding extra cover. Yeah. Even if you're going to go to day 3, don't do this. Just set up your position, wait. You'll get a much better result out of it. I would say I probably took an extra... extra 1,000 casualties minimum doing this, maybe as high as 2,000 or 3,000. You would need Recon 4. You need to have played with Recon 4 and been checking the numbers to really know for sure. But left this, at any time I could have cut this off, stopped taking casualties, and been in perfectly fine shape for day 3. But sort of the inertia of decision making, I'm already in position, I'm already fighting them, they're losing, even though I'm losing more than I should doing it, and so I just keep pushing them, even though I don't really shouldn't be. Okay, so after all that, day 3, we're facing 10,000 men and 1 unit of artillery, and we took about 7,000 casualties on that day, which by itself isn't bad, but if I could have dropped that to about 5, I think I would have been happier. So in camp, basically, I'm going to pull any unit with less than 1,000 men in it and pull them out. I'm going to pull out all of my 3-star artillery, just because, you know, their force is broken. This is just mop-up duty, so I might as well get experience on someone who can actually have stats that will keep going up. So I pull some of the snipers as well. This turns out to largely not be worth it. I guess it's fine, but I don't get much out of it because there's just so few men on the field that there's nothing to shoot at, which is another reason to leave more available for day 3. Then you can bring all these units in that just want to gain experience, and then you have something to work on because it's just a bunch of units sitting in fortifications in most cases. So really easy mop-up work for anything you have. So, going to bring in my extra units, just to get them some experience. Could bring in cavalry at this point, but turns out I have enough artillery and infantry that I want to get some experience, so I don't need to. And the goal with getting these units experience is I probably won't use them too much in the battles coming up, just because in a lot of ways, I would call Chickamauga the last easy battle of the Confederate campaign. Everything else kind of becomes a giant slog. I guess Saunders Farm isn't too bad. Or no, wait. Maybe it's Mansfield. I never keep those battles straight. The one where you can just flank in the woods to the north and then take out the entire position. That one's fairly simple, but so I don't really have too many more chances to get these units experience outside of something like Cold Harbor. So the higher I can get their stats, the more effective they will be when I bring them into Washington. So bringing in some of the units from day 1 again. And then I want to get them in, so I'm going to pull some more stuff out. But you can also see we used up about 80,000 in supply going to 3 days. So if you go to day 2, save the extra, though you can always use the trick to pull back supply. And then I think what you could actually do, and I haven't actually tested this, but I think what you can do is you can pull all 35k supply out of all 5 corps, even though 3 of those units never showed up on the field. And I think you get the full money back for all of it. I'm going to go down to 10,000 again, like I did in Gettysburg, just because I don't need the full supply. And I don't really feel like abusing the glitch too much. You can get a ton of extra money doing this, but you don't need to. So, you know, back up to 34k versus 10k. And accelerated this even faster because very little ends up happening. I sort of play it under the misconception that there's more units in the fortifications than there are, and I end up basically having my units walk across the field for an extended period of time while they don't run into anything. There are some reinforcements that come in from the north that you need to deal with, but as far as I know, everything else is just from day 1 and 2, and if you've done enough damage to it, there's nothing there. So what I'm doing is setting up a line so that I can hit from the north and sweep the entire line down, and I don't want them retreating to the east. It's enough trouble chasing stuff down on this map as it is. So that's why I'm setting up the way I am. I think there's only like 1 or 2 places that I really run into anything at all. And I just sort of let the artillery shoot away at it. And I'm pretty sure the only cannon left are the ones coming in with the reinforcements, so I don't have to worry about keeping units hidden or anything like that. This is one of those scenarios where you definitely want to individually click stuff, because if you group select, like artillery especially, if you group select artillery, and they will all move the speed of the slowest unit, as you can see here, like as soon as I give them the individual move order, they speed up. So if you're playing live, you're kind of stuck. You have to do that. You just don't have time to click on everything individually unless you're using pause or something. I guess in this battle, nothing's going on, so you have time. But whenever possible, I try and avoid using those group movement commands if I'm moving any real distance. It's just inefficient. So setting some units up in the north. I don't remember exactly where they spawn in, but I know they're somewhere in that area. So you're moving the snipers around, expecting to run into anything in the fortifications, but there's basically nothing there. And as you can see, you have so much time on day 3. It's a 12-hour timer, or 10-hour timer, or something like that. There's time available after that as well, the second phase. So you can see, if I hadn't done that push at the end, right now I could just be slowly working down this line. I have 10 hours to do it. Take almost 0 losses, slowly pushing that line down if you do it that way, as opposed to taking the extra losses I did trying to fight through, trying to clear that pocket. So one thing to note here is this is like day 1. If you capture every single victory point, the battle ends. Doesn't matter how much time you have left, it just auto ends. So if you're trying to chase down every last unit, don't take them early. Oh, we got that unit. There's a couple more, a little more infantry down here. Stopping these guys, just taking my time to run around on the side. There's the reinforcements coming in. See, I probably should have set up a little more to the east, then I would have been in a position to really take them out, but still in pretty good shape. They're going to walk right into an ambush, so problem solved. Now where I screw up here is I probably should have thought about the contain a little bit more. Like I probably should have detached skirmishers with every single unit and gotten a full contain right now. So when they start routing, they know exactly what I want them to. If I'd done that, I might have been able to trap them in the open. I just wasn't planning that far ahead when I did it. So, since I've discovered there is nothing in that line of defense, slowly moving everything down. And I think I triggered that phase early, and I think it's because I captured those top 3 victory points. I still have plenty of time, but I think if you hold off capturing those victory points, then that's how you would absolutely maximize your time. Though I've never actually played this phase to the very end without capturing victory points, so I don't know what the end of day timer looks like. So I'm trying to get us around going, and then I screw it up and chase them the wrong way. This map is so big that I never actually finish catching them. I'm not really sure how I should have handled that situation better. Maybe probably the answer is I should have not pushed. I should have backed off, let their morale regen a little bit, and then have them come back out when I was really in position to try and contain them. Instead, I'm going to let this unit slide the entire length of distance. Like, clearly the AI logic is set on its pattern of I'm going to go sideways, and I don't care what is around in one direction or another. That's the way I want to go. Just a little frustrating, but it happens. So bringing all the artillery up, still not finding anything. I think if you were, like, even if you were in really bad shape coming to this point of the battle, I think the easiest thing to do would just be loop your entire army to the north, bypass everything, and just capture Horseshoe Mill, or Horseshoe Bridge. Because all you need on this day, if I remember the conditions correctly, are Horseshoe Ridge. So you can capture that almost without a fight, because it takes so long for the AI to put anything there if you don't capture the entry points early. So it would be really easy to win this battle on day 3 with very minimal losses. So, not a lot more is going to happen in this battle. It's pretty much just going to be slowly chasing these guys down. And then I start moving a giant line south to sweep up whatever I can and clear up a few units. This is where I'm really regretting not properly containing that group, because now they're in heavy cover and I'm having to run after them to catch up to them, and I don't have artillery support. All that could have been avoided if I'd just set things up better. I probably should, again, be detaching more skirmishers and just completely surrounding them. So this is another case where I'm just taking more losses that I really shouldn't be. Long battle, 4-0. Playing the battle, I did notice that I had triggered the first timer early, and so I saw the finish pop up, and that's when I realized I didn't know for sure how much time I had to get the last victory point. I don't think I needed it. I don't really know why I made that choice. I know that you don't need all the victory points, but I saw the finish pop up and was like, oh, I should probably get that. I was moving through there anyways to try and hit those units. And so ended up ending the battle a little earlier than I needed to before I wiped those units in the north out, which is unfortunate, but there you go. Chickamauga. About 7-1. We're going to come out barely ahead on recruits, not very with after medicine. And we didn't quite get all of them, but close enough. Certainly enough to get some really good results. See, artillery does really well. Took some more losses than it usually does, but most of my higher casualties are on the newer units with Enfields, so that's good. There are a few units in there that start taking higher casualties than I would have liked. Most of that's that push on day 2, and dealing with the skirmishers and stuff on day 1. You just take high losses there. Not quite sure what those 2 units are, but those are much higher casualty numbers than I like to see out of enemy infantry units if I can avoid it. And again, there's just more infantry with higher numbers than I really like to see. Like, I'd prefer if cut all that in half, and I'd be happier. But I mean, I'm complaining about 7-1, so overall pretty good. Most of their artillery didn't do a whole lot. Always nice to see. And we prevented the mounted Minty from doing anything. One of the benefits, we got lots of officer promotions. all of them are going to be healed because we went to day 3. Got lots of 61s, a few Harper's Ferries. I'm not sure who was equipped with those on their side. Mostly 10-pound parrots. That's a little unfortunate. Like 20-pounders. Apparently they didn't use any of their supply at all, which is always nice. Some Spencers, yay, I guess. One 20-pounder. That'll make up for the one we lost, I guess. Yeah, and one 24-pounder. So yeah, pretty good haul. Yeah, so just barely came out positive in terms of medicine. I mean, overall, it's not too bad though. Those units are all pretty recoverable, pretty good shape. You know, those 800s aren't great, but not going to be too expensive to recover those. Didn't lose too many officers. Got a couple promotion unit upgrades. These guys didn't do anything. Yeah, another 3-star artillery unit. It's good. Oops, looks like I forgot to get the Lord perk when I brought it in, but I don't even know if it really did anything. Those guys didn't have a chance to do a whole lot. They did okay, but again, a lot of the stuff I brought in on day 3 just didn't get a chance to do anything because there's nothing to shoot. They walked around a little bit, and that was it. Yeah, this corps is in very good shape. A couple units didn't even take casualties from anything. And again, we got veterans and transfer, so we're at the minimum, but armory and training went up a little bit again. Nothing I can really do about that. But I think we are in pretty good shape to go into the following battles. I'll have to figure out how I want to do those, just because the ones coming up are my least favorite battles, and haven't played them in quite a while, so I need to find a good strategy to get through them with decent losses. So, that was a bit of a longer one, and not a lot going on for a good chunk of it, but that is one way to get through Chickamauga pretty easily, and that's how you get to day 3 if you want to. So, thanks for watching.